Hey guys, what's going on? This is my 2012 Halloween watch list, and right now we're in the middle of a little mini series in which I am talking about Franchise Fest. And in my mini series Franchise Fest, we are going to cover an entire film series from beginning to end. And yesterday we talked about Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, and I gave a forewarning that these do include spoilers. I really just thought it would be fair to do these all the same way. The next movie we're talking about doesn't necessarily need a spoiler, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about it with spoilers just because I would like to discuss this movie as a whole. And the movie we're talking about today is Halloween 3. And for most people, this is a love or hate kind of thing. I think, to me, Halloween 3 doesn't get very much respect because the filmmakers made a mistake of trying to tie this into Halloween. I knew what they were going for, and I've read it many times going back for like the last 20 years, and I respect them for that, and I wish they would have continued with that, but I also understand why it didn't work. Halloween 3 is intended to be a whole new storyline without Michael Myers, the Shape. Where we left on Halloween 2 was very final. As far as they were concerned and as far as it looked as a viewer, it would be almost impossible to bring back Michael Myers. They left him to just sit and burn in a fire, and he was roasted completely. So when you look at something like Halloween 3, you've got to realize that they intended to create something like an anthology series where each year you would have a new Halloween movie with a completely unrelated story. And they said that they'd actually thought that each of these could spin off its own sequel. So what you'd have is maybe 2 or 3 different separate lines of movies going through, and them not really have anything to do with one another other than they came out at Halloween. This particular movie is the only attempt at that, and it was unsuccessful. Unfortunately, this one was marketed in a way that people went to this movie thinking they would see Michael Myers, and it suffered because of it. The expectation level was there to see a sequel to Halloween 1 and 2. This movie itself, though, includes actor Tom Atkins, which I think he's great. He also had come off of other John Carpenter movies like The Fog. And then what you also have is Stacey Nelkin. She plays the female lead. And then you also have Dan O'Herlihy. You might know Dan O'Herlihy from movies like RoboCop. That's where I know him from the most. He is great in this. He is basically the villain, even though it's hard to see what kind of villain you're dealing with through most of this movie. Now, Tom Atkins in this, he seems like he would be a cop or a private detective, something like that, an investigator. But instead what you have is he is actually a doctor. He's a surgeon. And he gets led on this weird case where he is investigating the death of this person. What the movie starts off is this guy's on the run. He's being chased by these suits, these guys that are just kind of dressed up in very generic, blank-looking gray suits. And he ends up dying in this hospital. And the mystery of him dying is why. Why did this guy die? What is he talking about? And it's this very generic warning where he doesn't get to explain himself before he dies. Tom Atkins kind of takes it upon himself to discover what he's talking about and to, try to figure it out. And the Stacey Nelkin character comes in as his daughter, who also has questions. And Tom Atkins and Stacey Nelkin's characters start working together to try to kind of piece together the mystery of what killed this man, what led him to his death. And during the whole movie, what you have is a series of commercials and these interruptions where this advertising is kind of just blasted into the movie. It's very odd because at first it seems kind of annoying and then it becomes just part of the movie. I don't think you could have a movie like this without the advertising from the Silver Shamrock commercials being the backbone of what people remember of it. I think it stands out. And this movie starts to center around all these commercials and this factory that makes these masks. There's these 3 masks that are the new big hit for Halloween. You have a pumpkin, you have a witch, and you have a skeleton. And those 3 masks are selling like hotcakes as fast as they can get them in. They're selling out, and all the children have to get one. And there's going to be this big event that's going to happen on Halloween night. Make sure you watch your television because they're going to do this giveaway. Seems very generic, and it's kind of weird, like everybody starts following this like lemmings. You kind of just wonder what that has to do with Tom Atkins and him trying to investigate this murder of this man. And when they start investigating this, they are led to the factory where it's made. And it's a very odd confrontation because these people that we think of as the suits that keep popping up everywhere, these very nondescript people, they're very protective. This whole town where this factory's at is very generic in every sense of the word. And yet it's almost like an episode of the X-Files. You feel like something creepy's going on. There's nothing that looks normal without being too normal, if you know what I mean. Like everything becomes very skewed, because anything that would look like something like being paranoid or being cautious just comes across as bizarre. So all the people in this town start to stand out as being part of maybe this big plot. So our Tom Atkins character and our Stacey Nelkin character eventually decide that they're going to find a way into this factory. They're going to find a way to discover what is going on there and what that had to do with the death of Stacey Nelkin's father. And as they get closer and closer to the answers, things get more and more bizarre. You see the commercial over and over again, the Silver Shamrock commercial, which, if you don't know, is a blending of the London Bridge is falling down with this really weird synth type music, and also this kind of high-pitched, sped-up voice. And it's got that very Carpenter-esque type of synth music that's put with it. So it feels like it's an 80s version of the 70s stuff we expect from Carpenter. It's very attuned to what we think is happening during the 80s. It's very commercialized in certain ways. His music is now not just a soundtrack, it's marketing, that kind of thing. But as the movie starts to unfold, there's a lot to do with the cult, and there's a lot to do with robotics. This has a very science fiction type of feel to it. In fact, it is seen that Tommy Lee Wallace, the director of this, was actually going for a Pod People kind of feel of the movie. He was wanting it to seem like there was somebody that was coming after you that you wouldn't know who was good and who was bad. It's not like a faceless shape like in Halloween 1 or Halloween 2. This one has a definite shape, but it's like there's a very generic thing underneath it. And some of the enemies that are kind of pointed out in this one's like your television. It's kind of like a subtle type of theme that you see in a movie like Poltergeist. But once you realize that that's kind of what they're going for, you either are going to get on board or you're not. It's got a very cool ending. I like what they were planning with the mask. There's only a couple of times where we get to actually see what the masks will do to people, but that's kind of the whole build-up, is these masks are going to kill all these children. And to me, that's very spooky. I think it would be almost impossible to get away with this nowadays because there's such a push against anything that can be harmful to children. You can kill teenagers, you can kill adults, you can kill anybody you want, but children are almost untouchable in Hollywood nowadays. But back then, this was the whole plot of the movie. Was this one man was going to kill all of the children, or as many as he could. So if you get a chance, definitely check out Halloween 3. I think the ending is really, really cool. I think what they were going for is going to work on a very different level from Halloween 1 and Halloween 2, and that's the reason why I chose not to try to blend it with any of the other Halloween movies. But I had to speak about it because it is its own beast. I think if this movie would have just been called Season of the Witch, like many have pointed out, this would be a cult hit. This would just be a great 80s horror movie that would feel kind of cheesy, and it has some questionable kind of special effects that are, subpar by today's standards, but it would not get the kind of hate that it got during most of my upbringing as being the Halloween movie without Michael Myers in it. And I don't think you should judge it by just that. I think you go see this separate of Halloween 1 and Halloween 2 and don't know it's Halloween 3. You'll just appreciate it as any other kind of sci-fi horror movie. It's got that appeal. Let me know what you think. If you actually like this movie, put a comment down below. Let me know, because I really do. I have enjoyed this since I was a kid. I have very fond memories of renting this, just randomly, not knowing which Halloweens were which. Because when I was a kid, Halloween 1, 2, and 3 were kind of just plastered up there on the shelf by themselves, and you would recognize them by the title and by the color of the box being orange and black. And for whatever reason, I was always drawn to this one. And when I finally rented it, I was very surprised. I enjoyed it. I was blown away. I think I actually skipped Halloween 2, and I hadn't seen that. I'd seen Halloween 1, then I watched this maybe a year or two later. And then that's when I realized that this was so different. I thought this had Michael Myers in it, and I wasn't disappointed. I just thought of it as something different, and I think that'd be a good way of looking at it. So if you get a chance, definitely check out Halloween 3. I will see you guys again tomorrow, and we will talk about Halloween 4 and 5. All right, take care. Bye.